The press darlings, the press darlings, press darlings.
Feature a Sounds Music Weekly paper from the 10th of December 1977. Despite the uninspiring John Otway cover, this issue is packed full of punk. So straight in, the article there, the demise of Roxy Music. Closing order had finally been served due to local businesses complaining. The closure had actually been delayed by appeals since the end of 1976 when the Roxy first started. The article went on to explain the Roxy is booked right up until the end of the new year and will be holding a 48-hour Christmas party starting on Christmas Eve. And Mr. St. John also wants to record a second live album of the club. Moving on, there's a little article there on the Clash album controversy, which states that the Clash's first album was not being released in the US because it was so badly produced. Their second album, of course, would see Blue Oyster Cult producer and music journalist Sandy Pearlman brought in to refine that sound. Chart-wise, top of the new wave chart was Sweet Gene Vincent by Ian Jury. In the British album chart, number one was Disco Fever, which was a compilation album on KTEL. Worth pointing out that other albums in the chart at this time included Nevermind the Bollocks, This Is the Modern World, No More Heroes and Rattus Novegicus, Life on the Line and New Boots and Panties. So a pretty good showing all in all. Top of the British singles chart was Mull of Kintyre by Wings and Paul McCartney, which seemed to stay there for all eternity. Looking over there in the corner is a little advert there for the electric chairs for arguably their most notorious single. If you don't want me baby, you can blah, 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 blah. Anyway, little endures this time in terms of any gossip. So straight over to the singles, this time reviewed by ex-White Stuff fanzine writer Sandy Robertson. Bit of a strange set of reviews again here, with no particular favourite coming out there. I mean, basically, Menace Screwed Up, The Dead Boys Sonic Reducer, The Damned Don't Cry Wolf, The Port Dukes and Radio Birdman are all given cursory treatments by Sandy Robertson. However, what's noticeable is this review of Althea and Donna's absolutely timeless Uptown Top ranking. This is what Robertson says. Reggae is dumb, smug, dope-influenced retreads of the most nauseating aspects of the hippie-dumb ethos. It's boring as a dentist's drill up the bum. Which sounds extremely harsh, and even stranger given that there's a special reggae section from Vivian Goldman below. But anyway, on to the features. First one here is Neo. Neo were led by the American Ian North, and was originally, as some will always like to tell you, a proto-punk band from the time of the New York Dolls in New York. There his band was called Milk and Cookies. Apparently they played up-tempo music and dressed in dungarees and bow ties. Nice. They played CBGs and Maxes. However, as per usual, this all fizzled out and he ended up in London with the Simon Brothers, Robert and Paul. And they will feature on the live Vortex album. Robert Simon would go on to join Ultravox for their last album with John Fox. Nice Ramones Rocket to Russia advert as well. So, at last, an Adam and the Ants feature, and it's by the notorious Jane Suck, and it is in her style. Here's what she says. The ants, like my other perversion, the banshees, are what it must be like at the world's edge when they've just got the 4-minute warning and fallout is imminent. Everybody else is fornicating their way to oblivion, and these geeks in makeup and fancy threads pick their way through the bins and rubble for a gig. I believe rock and roll in its natural environment should be 75% visual and 25% heart-wrenching music. On the other side, a full-page advert for the Vortex compilation album following on from the first Live at the Roxy album. There's then a full-page advert for the Eaters debut album as well. Moving on, a little section here on the Pork Dukes. So there was always some doubt about who were the band because they apparently appeared in disguise when they played. It reveals that Pork Dukes, who specialised in obscene songs and record covers, including Bend and Flush and Making Bacon, were revealed as Colin and Stuart Goldring of the prog tongue twister band Gnidralog. Even more interesting was that Nigel Pegram of Steel Eye Span was involved because they used to use his publishing company. And in fact, he plays drums on one of the recording sessions when the drummer in the band, Nick Kerr, is ill. They also featured Tim Newman on bass as well. The Damned and Dead Boys was a big ticket item as they were touring through the UK at the time. Also, the Damned had released Music for Pleasure to, I'd have to say, probably not wild acclaim, and definitely some mixed feelings on it. This was the New Look Damned with Lou Edmonds and John Moss, and most of it's conducted in the dressing room with the captain poking fun out of Lou's nose. Interesting bit with Dave Vanian, he's there with his mum and wife. It says, Vanian blacks his boots in the corner and chats to his suitably cadaverous wife and his homely mum, who's wearing the tight-fitting maroon leatherette coat that makes her look like she's got a corset on the outside of her clothes. It also talks about the Dead Boys and Stiv's ability to be able to pull his trousers down, turn round and look like a hermaphrodite. He finishes up with a small bit on the Damned, which is, now most people seem to have written the Damned off. But they have not been content and complacent enough to stay where they were 6 months ago. Given time and space, I'm sure they'll manage to weld the mixture of old and new material into some kind of chaotic cohesion. As we all know, they ended up splitting up. So, on to the albums, and it's a fairly lengthy review of said Vortex album by John Savage. For those who don't know, the Vortex, aka Crackers, was in Wardour Street, London, and a famous dance-off venue, and was originally to be called the Void Club by Andrew Tchaikovsky and Susan Carrington when they were ousted from the Roxy, but they were shafted again. This time the shafting was done by John Miller, an ex-soldier and mercenary who employed fellow ex-soldiers as bouncers, who merrily kicked the hell out of teenage punks and girls and boys because they were so hard. Miller squeezed what he could out of the club, but to be fair, they had some fantastic lineups, and he's perhaps most famous for his aborted kidnap of train robber Ronnie Biggs in Brazil. Anyway, the album features the Wasps, Maniacs, Art Attacks, Mean Street, and much more, but it's a pretty damning review by John Savage, giving it a paltry 2 stars out of 5. Ha! Another sledgehammer blow pulping revolt into style. 12 tracks recorded live, performed by up-and-coming little-known bands. Fair enough, there might be some aces in the hole, but none appear. As for identification of the venue, I mean, come on, the Vortex? Hey, Daddy-O, don't want to go down to the debasement. Don't you waste your money, so. As plastic gap fill, this is profoundly depressing, as is the consistent lack of originality, distinguishing features that turns your brain to Novocaine. He then mentions the contracts, which, as I understand it, bands were pretty much forced into signing. Master Switch were due to be on the album and were recorded, but they were dumped when they didn't sign the contract. Other bands mentioned overdubs or performing in the club to no audience. Whatever, the article prompted a flurry of letters, not least from Jessie Lynn of the Wasps, who was very aggrieved at the review. Over the pages, we have a review of Warsaw Pakt by Mick Wall. He gave it 3 stars. Warsaw Pakt was seasoned pros. They featured the ex-Motorhead drummer Lucas Fox and some members of the Zips with Andy Colquhoun, who were a proto-punk band. It was recorded, mixed and mastered in the shop within 24 hours on Island Records and was limited to 5,000 copies. The same deal was actually offered to the Slits, but they turned it down. Mick says, If Warsaw Pakt become popular enough, this might well turn out to be a rare mini classic of sorts. On the other hand, it could be destined to become an idiosyncratic one-off item pushing up the racks of a few selective bargain bins. After Warsaw Pakt, Andy Colquhoun joined Brian James's Tans de Youth and subsequently played with the Pink Fairies and XMC5 Wayne Kramer. Also reviewed here was the infamous Skrewdriver. Skrewdriver were from Blackpool or close by and were signed to Chiswick Records. By the time they'd recorded this album, the original guitarist who played on it, Phil Walmsley, had left. Again, Mick Wall is the reviewer there. And I thought skinheads became extinct about 7 years ago. Silly me. Musically, they were a very tight, hard grafting band playing punchy rock rhythms. Yes, they do what they do very well. Boredom, frustration, anger, sexual fear, assertion. Now there's no way Skrewdriver can be written off yet. Not by a long chalk, and certainly not so early on in the game anyway. Perhaps a quick reiteration of the new wave policies might solve a few of the problems. They've got the brawn, all they need. Now they need the brain. To be fair though, this was their high spot. Within weeks, skinhead violence at the Vortex, which they actively encouraged, meant them dropped by Chiswick and left them labelless and penniless, so retreating back up north. Grinny would join the Nipple Erectors for a while, then like singer Ian Stewart embraced the National Front. And the rest is history, except to give punk Facebooks the existential dilemma of is it okay to like early Skrewdriver before they declared themselves officially right-wing or not. Cue endless posts for and against. Check out also Mark Riley of Mark and Lard in his autobiography, because he would drum for Skrewdriver at this later stage when they reformed, and is recounted in his said memoir, which mentions him playing in the band without saying their name or anything really. What else? Lots more nice ads. We go through here. There's an actual here now, along with those longer reviews here, we have smaller reviews of all of the albums that have been out there. So we have Eater, Eddie and the Hot Rods, The Jam, Runaways, Sex Pistols, Throbbing Gristle, Wire, and the various Streets compilation album. Eater, the album, gets a bit of a short shrift, 3 stars. Musically, pretty tight within strict punk confines, but the lyrics are mostly fragmentary fourth form bitchiness. Let's try Throbbing Gristle. Throbbing Gristle, the second annual report, 5 stars. I don't know nothing about this one. The 5 stars are Sandy Robertson's tribute to art as intolerable noise, or I think so, anyway. And finally, on the various Streets, a very significant release, rounding up new wave singles from a whole plethora of independent labels and providing a fine showcase for them. Probably better overall than the Vertigo sampler. It's closer to the roots and the heart of the movement. Will be regarded as an important document in future years. For now, just enjoy it. So, over we go. Let's have a quick look at some of the live stuff in the live reviews. Suburban Studs at the Marquee. The Suburban Studs were a Birmingham, originally a glam band from Birmingham, and were signed to WEA. Mick Wall was definitely getting his cash in here, because yet another review for him, except he was slightly disappointed by the whole affair. Mid-set, I'm waiting for the killer song. That's when things begin to go wrong. Now we're going to wake up all the pensioners at the back, said the singer, and crashed into my generation. It was god-awful. Zips stripped off his jacket, beret and guitar to reveal a skin-tight bondage motif. Surprise, surprise. The pogoers loved it. I couldn't wait to get home. So there you go. What started relatively interesting dissipated into little more than what you might see any night of the week down at the Marquee Vortex Roxy. Blah, blah, blah. Similarly, Jane Suck, with her review of the Unwanted and X Ray Spex, also has this kind of slight air of things not happening or getting a bit stale. Says Jane, I'm getting old. Being drunk at gigs is no fun anymore. There's a vacuum in the scene, and only a handful of that are filling it. Susie, the ants, the slits, buzzcocks. The unwanted, given a couple of months' intensive rehearsals, could well join the elite. I left X Ray Spex halfway through. My fault. There's no challenge there. And if you don't want to be bothered with disturbing and shooting your mother up, then I'm more sorry for you than you could ever be for me. Ooh. Over into the gig guide. Let's just have a quick look at these. I'd say my pick here would have been At The Vortex. Definitely would have been there. Would have gone there to see Electric Chairs along with the Skunks and Backlash. And then on the Tuesday, the next day, I think this lineup of Eater, Raped, The Members and Dick Envy would have been the pick there. Over we go. It's worth pointing out here in the small ads, always like to have a quick look at those. Dear Sheena, I love you very much. I've even bought a velvet collared bondage jacket. And you gotta admit, the crepes are great for pogoing. Love, Eddie. Probably a little reference there to the Eddie and Sheena single by Wayne County and the Electric Chairs. So, finishing up here, get on to the letters. Just a quick one. Always good, some fun stuff in there. One here about seeing the Jam at the Liverpool Empire. Being a boring old fart, this was the first punk concert I had been to. I don't think I'll bother going to another. I felt completely out of place with my long hair, flared jeans, suede boots, leather bomber jacket, and most of all my rainbow t-shirt. The aforementioned t-shirt was the source of some concern for me. I had to keep my leather jacket zipped up so no one would see my rainbow crest. The source of my amusement came from the punks. How the bloody hell can those dickheads go around dressed like tramps? Even my dad's got more style than them, and that's saying something. They claim that their clothes give them individuality, but as far as I can see, they end up looking like a mob of pseudo Johnny Rottens with no credibility. And that finishes off for today. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe and click alert. I'll be trying to do one every Thursday, so cheers and have a good one.